So we're going to go over the iPad setup right now. If you'll see, I have it on this kickstand so I can show you some functions of it. So it is a normal iPad, so the power is going to be at the top right. If you're vertical, or you can see where it is, there's a little mushed indent into the rubber case. If you push that, that powers it on. I have made this a password non-protected device. It's going to ask you to update and turn on two-factor authentication and all that stuff, and you're going to have to ignore that from here forward because unfortunately this is not on the internet. Actually, fortunately, it's not on the internet. This is really meant to be your mixer. So when you start the home screen, your home button is on the bottom of your vertical, or over here right now on the right side. When you push that on, you should be able to turn on the iPad and not have to do anything more than that. The only thing that really matters for you is this Yamaha SM, which is your stage mix app. So you want to engage that. And then it's going to ask you to connect to the iPad. And in this case, you'll see that it's listed here and it shows an address. So you just hit connect. If you get disconnected, this is how you do it. To check that you're online, if you look at the top left, you'll see that it says online. So, unlike what I showed on the touch screen, this gives you the full keys to the kingdom. In other words, you can operate every function from the iPad. So this is really something you want to hand over to somebody who's authorized and understanding of how to use the mixing of this, and not to somebody who doesn't, because they could get themselves into a heck of trouble and you would have no way to stop them, because this really does allow them to do everything as an administrator. Unfortunately, that's not defeatable, so just remember that. The touch screen on the mixer itself, I can set up some password permitted usage, but the iPad is full access. Because you have a little more real estate on the iPad, you have a bit more to see. So the way this is laid out is much like the touchscreen. You can slide your fingers around to get through the channels. There is a bank of channels just as you had before. In this particular case, it's not going to be laid out the same way. So these are all your inputs. You're really only using 1 through 13 as your inputs, so I'm not going to go through all those, but quickly, just you have your wireless in green, your wired mics in blue. In pink, you have the stereo inputs on the wall jacks, and then you have a floor jack on channel number, lucky number 13. 14 and on are not utilized, so you don't need to learn anything about those. You can, like I said, slide your finger across to get to different channels. You can also use these two areas up here. If you'll notice when I'm sliding my finger, these two areas light up, and these are actually the meters for those input stages. So it's kind of gives you a little dashboard of what's activity-wise going on in those two zones. On the right-hand side will always be your output. In this case, the mix is where you're mixing always to. You can also, in this case, adjust to 2 different matrix feeds, which is what we're using for the hall and lobby areas. I don't know how often you're going to do that from here, but how you do it is on the right-hand side, you'll see a slew of little grade letters and numbers here. And if I slide my finger up to matrix 1, you'll see now it'll say hall. And if I slide my finger to matrix 2, it'll say lobby. And if I slide it back to off, now we're back to the stereo mix. So if you want to know where the mix is going, the right-hand side is where you select it. There's really only 3 choices. Off, which is your standard mix, to mix to both zones. And then you can individually set the fader level output to those 2 zones on matrix 1 and 2, which are labeled Seton Hall and the lobby. So that's kind of the lay of the land there. What's different here also than the touch screen is there's the input stage and the EQ and all that are down on the bottom as different tabs. What's nice is with the EQ stage, you'll see that there's some spectrum analysis going on where it's actually showing the activity from the microphone that's built into the iPad. What's nice about that is you could have this on in the space and it's going to be listening to the room. So if, let's say, there was feedback, most likely not, but if there was, you would be able to recognize the frequency and where that lies within the EQ. Not going to get further into that, but it's a nice little feature that they have with the iPad app. There's a gate, a compressor, and some more functions that we can get into at a later date. For right now, you're just going to hit the home button and adjust your fader levels and your channels on and off from here, and that should be all you need to do from the iPad. Again, to power this on and off, it's up on the top left here, and when you power it back on, it's going to go through this. Like I said, you're just going to have to ignore some of these things it's asking to do because you don't need to do those things. You just need to start the unit. If it starts and it gets right into the app, which could be good, it most likely will go through this pairing issue because it's been turned off. So if you hit cancel it, or if you wait long enough, sometimes it'll just find itself and figure it out, so it's now online. But if you're not sure, like I said, you just check the upper left, and with that you'll know whether it's online or not. And then if you want to go offline, it'll look like this, and if I hit this and I go, oh, I want to go back online, it'll sync, and there you are. It's really quite quick. Hopefully that gives you a quick course on how to adjust and understand the lay of the land in the iPad app for your new mixer in Seton Hall.